Welcome to Brandon Hall Group's HCMx Radio, the only podcast in the HCM arena that weaves current market research, HR technology, and industry leaders into each episode. Our HCMx Radio host is our Chief Operating Officer and Principal HCM Analyst, Rachel Cook.
Hi, good morning and good afternoon. Thank you for listening in. I'm Rachel Cook. I'm the COO of Brandon Hall Group's HCMx Radio podcast. I'm excited to have with me today Tedrick, the VP of Global Learning and Development at Verizon. Welcome, Lou. How are you doing?
I'm great, Rachel. Thank you.
And for those of you that may know Lou, Lou has been a human resources professional for many years now, and with a lot of expertise in organizational development, learning development, and employee relations. She's been at Verizon for since I believe 2012 or maybe longer. And Verizon has held or been ranked number 11 in the 219 ATD Best and has ranked among the best for the 6 consecutive years. And we've known Lou for many years. It's so exciting to see all the great work that they've done at Verizon to from gamification to learning experiences. And so I think today is very timely. We're going to be talking about how they have how they've reskilled their employees and the development they call redevelopment and reskilling your workforce with COVID-19. And so she's got a lot to share, and I'm excited. And then also with us today is Claude Werder, our EVP of Research at Brandon Hall Group. Claude is involved with all of our research practically, from diversity inclusion, leadership development, learning, and Claude has also worked a lot with Lou and her team over the years. And so welcome, Claude.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So let's talk about, Lou, how does Verizon define reskilling at your workplace?
Yeah, so we that's a great question, Rachel. And many people have asked us reskilling, upskilling, what's how do you define that? So we actually look at reskilling as when we have employees who are learning new skills to perform a different job. So the examples I'll share today were examples where we had employees who were performing one job and we were asking them to do a different job. So we focused on the skills necessary to perform that other position.
And as you mentioned, learning new jobs is so important right now because especially adjusting and trying to figure out, the transition from being at a location or being in an office. And now so many of your staff and employees are working remotely. So based off of this is what necessitated the reskilling at Verizon. How did you determine who would get reskilled and for what roles? Can you elaborate there?
Absolutely. So back on March 13th of 2020, we made the decision, like many other companies, that we were going to be working from home. And so our first order of business that Friday through the following week was really just to get every employee set up at home to work effectively. So in some instances, that meant people having equipment sent to their homes, people taking equipment from the office to the home. There were a whole host of things that we did. And after April 1st, one of the things that also occurred was that because of COVID-19, many of our stores had to close their operations or significantly reduce the operation to limit the number of employees and customers in the stores, to maintain social distancing, to keep the environment safe for customers, employees, or they may have been in a market where, the businesses were just all completely shut down by the state and local government. So we had retail employees who were at home without a store in which to work, and also unknown when those stores would be open again. we had customers who needed service and needed support, and they would likely go to a store to get that service or support. So we were able to quickly shift them to different channels of service delivery. So we promoted our customer service, the ability to call, the ability to chat with customer service reps, and if you needed to procure new device, accessories, etc., we pointed them to our web as well as to telesales. So as you can imagine, the influx of calls, customers chatting, people contacting telesales, that all grew. So we really had what I would call a supply and demand issue, where we had more reps than we needed in retail, and then more customer volume in customer service, chat, telesales than we had, people to support them. So one of the first things that was determined by the business was, what if we gave these retail reps the opportunity to select which of these channels they could help with as an interim role, and then could the L&D organization actually train them to take on some of those new positions, because they had fundamental knowledge of our products, how to support our customers, just supporting them in a different channel. So that was the first order of business, was to determine, to offer that to the reps and say, we know you want to continue working, we have these options. So we created, our talent acquisition team created like an internal marketplace where they could identify first, second, third choice of which channel they would want to work in. Once we did the matching, then it was handed over to my team to do the skilling. So we really found that for those channels, in particular call center, phone, customer service, voice calls, telesales, that was a perfect fit for someone from retail. We also, as you asked, how do we match like the talent and the skills? We also felt that a tenured call center rep who was taking voice calls was probably in the best position to chat with customers. They just needed to learn how to chat. And so that was another group where we identified who could we reskill to move from taking voice calls to chat. So what our team did was look for, so we had multiple moves we were making. You could be retail going to customer service voice. So we looked at what skills does that retail rep have, what body of knowledge do they have, what systems do you use for customer service voice calls that you'd use in retail, and then what would be new for those folks. And the new things, the new systems and call handling processes that they needed to learn took about 8 to 12 hours to train them. So we just really isolated what they didn't know. And then we scheduled them to complete this 8 hours of training. And once they completed the training, they were put on the phones, and they were shipped equipment, they were trained, then put on the phones. And within a few days, they were, productively handling, voice calls from customers. The same thing happened with retail to telesales. We did the same thing. We looked at what do they already know, what systems do they already use, and then what are the things that they don't know, systems they have to learn. And then we created a 10-hour program to cover that specific information. And then they actually were within 1% of the telesales reps close rates. Just the person who had been hired for telesales close rates within a week. So we were able to really ramp them up to productivity quickly. Anecdotally, they were thrilled to be serving the customers, because they really did not want to just be sitting home idle. They wanted to be, supporting the customers, because they really felt like telecommunications was critical to people at this time. And so we had this great thing to offer our customers, so we want to be there for them. And then they also appreciated that we honored what they knew, and what their expertise was, and only train them on the things that they didn't know. So that was really good feedback for us, because there are times we sometimes get pushed by the business to train them on other things that are, extraneous, because we have them. So let's train them on that. And then we were super, super surgical, and it was really appreciated by them. And so we're going to use that as something going forward. Like, let's just train people on what they need and let them go do the work. And then if we have to come back around with other things later, we can do that. But they really respect when you respect them, and they learn pretty quickly. And then lastly, with that group of customer service reps it was an 8-hour program to get them up to speed on how to chat with customers. We also had people in our retail to business channel. These are our reps who handle customers in our stores who have small, medium-sized businesses, and they come to our stores to do business. They too didn't have the ability to service the customers out of the stores. So we also looked at that group as another group to handle business telesales classes, business telesales customers. And then they also helped with a service called conferencing. Verizon sells conferences like we're meeting on today, voice conferences where the operator introduces you to a Zoom call or whatever call. And we needed about 100 reps to help there. So some of those reps volunteered to learn how to be operators and reservationists for large calls, just to help us cover a gap for a period of time. So it was a real success story for redeploying resources, quickly skilling them up, and then having them be productive and help our customers.
And that's the key. You were able to do it so quickly and effectively. And during the pandemic, there was so much uncertainty in the beginning, and it happened so quick, right? We were in the office one day, getting ready for the spring the next day, and then shutting down, and everybody's at home for the most part, except for essential workers. What percentage of your organization went remote? It was pretty large from what I remember.
Yeah, for the most part, it was 100% of our workforce immediately was at home. And then gradually, our field technicians were considered essential workers, like those in the Northeast who provide, our services like our FiOS service, internet, cable, et cetera. They were back, we gradually worked them back into the field, but the bulk of everybody else was working from home. And we were fortunate in the call center space. We had been doing, we had a group of home-based agents that, and a plan to start work, to increase the size of the home-based agents in our call centers. So we had the infrastructure. We just hadn't scaled it to that, sure, scale of 136,000 type of employees. And so my team was actually able to quickly, the folks who were the instructional designers who developed for instructor-led or virtual instructor-led training, the delivery teams who know how to deliver, we had curriculums for them. So we were very quickly able to skill up our instructional designers on how you design for virtual, quickly skill up our delivery team. Here's how you design for virtual. We had platforms like we use Adobe Connect 10, and we have training for that. And we have people who know how to be producers and trainers or facilitators. So we were able to just get masses of people through our own internal training to have them prepared to do this. And then just a lot of best practice sharing across my team. So we were really lucky that because we had done some of this, we just, as fast as we could, spread it across, our organization. And then the last thing I would say, we were fortunate. We had implemented an LXP. We have the degreed LXP that we implemented a year ago, April, and that allowed us to curate a number of pathways and learning plans around how to lead remotely, how to work remotely. We had things on health and wellness. so having those resources, and we had 92% of adoption rate on that platform at the time we were starting COVID. So because people already used it,
Right.
we were able to say, hey, here's some great new curated resources for you. And there's a lot of take rate after that.
That you're very in a good situation, I think, starting, and you were able to only, I feel, take your resources and adapt them well in the environment that you need to do so. And Claude, from the research that we've been doing and all the interviews, and Lou's team, stands out as one of the leaders, I would say.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, Lou's team has been able to excel at what the majority of folks in our research studies have really struggled with. They realized right away they needed to do some upskilling and reskilling, but in interviews they really struggled to prioritize what they needed to do, and so they were kind of treading water for several weeks. And then the last thing that Lou said about the technology is key. Less than half of organizations felt that they were ready for accelerated or expanded e-learning, and so were really struggling. They didn't have the adoption of that kind of platform. So most companies were, they knew what they needed to do, but they weren't in a position to execute it at the level that Verizon's been able to do. So I think that's really the lesson: is you have to be prepared. You have to be target your response coordinated across the enterprise, and have the technology that you can leverage and leverage it quickly.
Yeah, and I'd say my team is embedded with the business and the HR business partners. So us zeroing in on what's really critical and important and prioritizing is I would say not super easy, but fairly easy, because everything seems to be a priority. But I think we're able to work with the business to, if we can't do everything you're asking us, what's relatively prioritized against the others. So that's an organizational model and governance that we have in place that then helps support all the learning assets and the technology that we have.
I think go ahead.
Because you were able to shift so rapidly from being in a store or in a corporate environment, and then ensuring that your team, your workforce still can work in this environment, because a lot of organizations and industries, not all, there are some really strong also other companies that are positioned well, but I think, like similar to you, they were early adopters for technology, and they had the type of jobs and employment that will allow them to be able to continue work in this uncertain environment. So, but with that said, what I really liked about what you did was to take and to enhance some of what they already know, but then give them or empower them to do new things. And so, during this time, everybody's struggling and concerned, about their work, about what's happening next. And so I think you're at a very good position of being able to show leadership and to show, how to adapt quickly and to thrive in this type of situation. Claude, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And, we asked a lot in our research about the leadership behaviors that companies have been able to exhibit. And a lot of companies have really stepped up and done a really great job in difficult circumstances. But the thing that they've struggled with the most is that empowerment piece, empowering employees to really adapt to new situations and work closely to adapt their skills and make change. And that's been the biggest struggle that organizations have had. And again, Verizon's a great example of how to make that happen. And it drives everything else that Lou's been talking about. Because if you don't have that empowerment, if people aren't motivated and empowered to take action on their own, it's difficult to steer the ship quickly to new levels.
And I think it was about a few months back, we were talking about, okay, so now everybody's kind of accustomed to working from home or getting situated, trying to figure out their home situation and how they are organizing themselves, and the topic of performance and how did you how are you dealing with performance and being able to measure, and now you mentioned that you've got a lot of success from your approach here. What are the things that you are capturing as far as success?
So I think there are groups within the business who have key performance indicators, dashboards that would tell them are people being productive, or where are there areas for opportunity. And so those dashboards really didn't change with whether you were working in the office or working from home. So it did help us pinpoint where someone might be struggling and where they weren't. So I think just if you have that kind of dashboard in place, so most of our call centers, our sales teams, our technicians, they all have productivity measures that people can look at. I think for what I would call the knowledge worker, the office-based worker, that was probably the trickier one, and still some leaders I still think struggle with, if I'm not seeing somebody working, how do I know if they're really productive or not? So part of our series on leading remotely was really trying to help leaders look for, how do you keep conversations going with your team members? How do you keep them engaged? How do you have regular meetings with them to make sure they understand what their priorities are? And how do you focus on the outcomes, not the activity? Because what I would hear people describe to me was, well, I can't see what they're doing. And then I asked, but are they getting done what you need them to do? Well, yes. Okay, then why do you think that they're not productive? So because I can't see what they're doing. So part of it is just helping people shift their focus from activity to outcomes. And that's the thing that we've been trying to help our leaders with. I think it's not all leaders, but I think the people who are most comfortable with working in an office, that was the biggest change that they needed to make.
I think more so, even before the pandemic, I think that shift started as far as measuring performance around outcomes and not always just around the workload or the activity itself, but what is it, what is it all, what is the whole package of it, I guess would be a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
And Lou, I have a question for you too. As far as managing or looking at the activities and the workload, have you seen more work being done with what the business needs? Have you seen less? Have you seen ways that your workforce is doing things that make it easier now that they have the ability to maybe not travel as much to the office? Are there things that on the positive side that you think you're going to take forward, even hopefully after this pandemic, sooner than later? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think some of the things that people have appreciated is they don't have commute. In some instances, there's not the commute time that they once had, or there's not the travel that they once had. I've had a delivery team that traveled quite a bit, and so and I also, some of my delivery team traveled internationally, so they've been able to interface with their learners internationally, but not have to be on planes, trains, and automobiles. So for many, that aspect of work-life balance, if there is such a thing, has been nice. I'm back at home. I've also heard, and again, it's more anecdotal than it's that we've really documented, that some people have filled that commute time with more meetings. So I think there's there's also that, I think a challenge that we all have is how do I establish some boundaries so that the lines are not completely blurred between being at home.
Right. Lou, we're not hearing you. The voice, your volume has gone out. Claude, are you hearing her, or is it just me?
Lives to live. So
no, I'm not hearing. I'm not hearing it. I think she just came back.
You're back with us now.
sorry about that.
We saw you chatting away. We hope we didn't miss anything important.
I was saying that some of our leaders have helped employees easily establish, the lines between personal and work, and have said, we don't really want people after a certain time of day. It's not really appropriate unless it's emergency that you should contact them. Let's end our meetings at this time. Let's start our meetings at this time. Other leaders have gone to ending meetings, 10 minutes before the hour or 5 minutes before the half hour, just to allow people to get from meeting to meeting, because we just stack them all up. So I think that people are starting to be more sensitive to how do we help each other find some of that balance throughout the day and not encroach into, all hours of the day.
That's great. And Lou, again, I think it's fantastic, the job that you've done and all the work that you have led to help accomplish, your approach here and your strategy. So congratulations. And
thank you.
You have great team members too that empower you to be a great leader. So it's great when you have that. And some of your people you've been working with on the same team for years, right? A
Yes.
long time. But very close team.
Yeah, some for quite a while. And then I would also say we have great senior leadership support. Our CEO, Hans Vesberg, very much an advocate for employees, customers, shareholders, stakeholder, society. And he is a big advocate for continuous learning. So he's always been that way. It's been a great, he's really focused on that during this period. And he has a regular webcast check-in, daily with the employees. And our CHRO, Christy Pambianchi, also took a very front and center role with COVID, and she's really enabled us and given us, the latitude to do everything we could to support employees during this time. She too is they co-host these meetings with employees daily. So we feel very fortunate as well that our senior leadership at the head of our company, and then also in the head of HR, where we're part of that organization, are incredibly well supported, and they believe in, learning and continuous growth of employees. So that makes it even easier to do what we love to do every day.
That is so important, to have that leadership and to have a great CEO and a great support across the executive team. That makes your jobs much easier.
Yes.
It enables a healthy culture.
Yes,
Claude,
absolutely.
Do you have any questions for Lou? Is there anything that you'd like to add before we wrap it up?
Well, I think the Verizon story is really squares up with our research. Is that everything Lou said, from being targeted in approach, strategic, technology tied into everything, and then the leadership from above. I think the organizations that have had the best success stories, it started from the top right away with outgoing support, with communication across the enterprise. And so I think it's just a great use case study of putting all the dynamics of great learning and development and talent management together to get a great outcome.
And speaking of a use case or a success story, you have won so many awards from Brandon Hall Group over the years, and we always look forward to hearing your stories and your examples during our HCM Excellence Conference. So we're hoping, fingers crossed, everything is aligning in the stars for all of us, that we can continue and we can, still be able to one day, be in person again together and hear the success from your team. Though until then, we'll continue to have many more of these virtual sessions as time allows us, and we appreciate your support and your partnership, and we are just, so delighted to see all the great work that you're doing, and thank you for sharing.
Oh, you're quite welcome, and always enjoy the opportunity to talk with you, Rachel and Claude. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, and also
thank you.
On your houses. So good luck with all of that. I know that's a lot of work, but great stuff.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a good weekend.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.